Hey everyone, welcome to today's Jaxon Deminar. Today we're going to be talking about the Jaxon platform and specifically a compliance use case. So just kind of a quick overview. The Jaxon platform is basically a way to take natural language rules and apply them to any sort of textual output. So the technology is really around extraction of those rules. And that can be, it's basically taking your methodologies, your heuristics, external regulations, internal company policies, turning those into natural language rules, and then applying them to whatever text you want. So that can look like review, analysis. So if you're analyzing documents, you can apply to your analysis process. It can look like compliance, as we're going to talk about today, where you have a set of policies, external regulations you want to apply to information, or internal policies you want to apply to communications, for example. So that's the tech. That's what the platform does. You deploy it right now as it's containerized. You can deploy it to a private cloud. You can deploy it on your own servers, and it's accessible by API. So we have a client that's right now written in Python. We will add other languages, but right now it's written in Python, and you can add it into your code base and you call into our API, which is well documented. So basically, it fits into whatever application you're building for a use case that fits what I just described. So for the compliance use case, first I'm going to walk through, this is a little demo app that we built to kind of demonstrate the concept. So compliance, again, is you have a set of policies, let's say externally, in this case, it's FINRA regulations. So if you're a financial services company, you have FINRA regulations you want to make sure you're not running afoul of. You then want to apply those to your internal communications, your external communications, maybe your marketing materials, text messages, all that stuff. That's the idea here. Is you can do that. You can do that with this service. You could deploy us as on your internal servers and build an application around our capability to make sure you're compliant. So today we're just going to show email specifically. So keeping it nice and simple. So this is the demo application. So here it is. You can move through individual emails. We just got an example of 5 here. These are not real emails. We made these up. But all of them are intended to show, for the most part, some sort of violation of FINRA regulations. So I run one already. I had one run. Let me run it again. This is going to take just a second. So basically, what it's doing right now is, and I'll show you the platform side of this. So this is an app. So this is a standalone application. It is integrated with our platform, as I mentioned. We have a server deployed, and so it's interfacing with that server by API and using the platform as we've configured it. And so for any given use case, you need to configure the platform for that specific use case. I'll show you how that works in a second. But so I've run this email through. You can see now what you're seeing at the bottom here is a list of rules that have either passed or been violated. So what our system has done is reviewed that text, which is a fairly short snippet of text, and said, are we compliant with these rules or not? Fail obviously means that you're not compliant with that rule. Pass means you are. I'll explain more on this in a second, but I'll show this just for explication. You can see here, this shows you a little bit of what our system is doing. It's asking questions that pertain to that rule to figure out whether or not there's a violation of that rule in the text. So this is part of how we get to our answer. A little bit hard to discern just in a quick glance, but I wanted to share that. And each of these rules is derived from, so this links to the actual FINRA content. So this is the snapshot of the content we used to generate the rules in the first place. So you can see, and you'll see in the actual agent, it shows the rule number here. Those are real rule numbers that are taken from the document in this section. Here's the actual FINRA document here that we used. And so each of these has an actual ID associated with it. So that's what's happening, is it's showing you whether or not there's a pass or fail in each of these individual rules, and it tells you whether or not you're compliant with FINRA at the end of the day. And yeah, see a bunch of these passed as well. It's quite a long list that we pulled from that section of document. So that is the demos app side. So now I want to show you the platform side. So again, this is this application standalone, which is what any app that you wanted to build with our system would do, is be integrated with our client, our Python client, and you call into our platform. So the platform looks like this. So there's lots of configuration you can do. Any given application is in a given use case. So that's how we define an application. And we define beneath that, we have a set of guardrails. So each guardrail can you can have one, you can have many, but basically each of those is used to represent a bunch of rules in the system. So in this case, we have what I'm showing you here is the one guardrail we defined for the rules I just shared with you. So I mentioned that there's a way to, part of the capability is being able to extract the rules, which isn't necessarily a simple process. In the case of, you can write them manually if you want. You can extract them from other documents. We are, that's a heavy area of research for us is ways to simplify the process of extracting rules from your process, because we want, it depends on the value you want to bring, is to be able to capture your process, things that might not be documented elsewhere, and put it into a set of rules that you can actually utilize throughout the organization and preserve and understand and analyze. So here you have a policy document. This is the one I just shared you. This is the FINRA document. Basically what you do here, this is part of the configuration process. What I'm walking through now is configuring the guardrail with those rules so that you can apply them to your use case. So you have an initial policy document, you extract all the rules. So there's some configuration here. I won't go into this, but this is ways of configuring how you extract the rules to get to a certain level of precision. You can experiment with that. These are the rules that were actually generated by our system. So you can see each one of these has the FINRA ID associated with it. This is the natural language representation of the rules. And the next step, and this is part of how we ensure a certain level of accuracy in what we're doing, is we turn all of those rules into code. So this is DSAIL, which is our domain-specific AI language, which is the DSL. Domain-specific language, but it's our own. This is a set of assertions that represent all those rules that I just shared with you. And within each of these assertions, you can see these are variables, meaning they don't have a value yet. They need a value to have any meaning. And so basically this code is more of a template, and it needs to be filled in to actually have full meaning. So the next step then is we generate a set of questions for these assertions to fill in those gaps with any given context the system is looking at. So you can see here are the questions here. We have a ton of different questions. Some return Boolean values. Looks like in this case, most are Booleans, but that's not necessarily the case. It could return strings as well, or numbers. But it's, so the questions return values. And basically, so you have the DSL represented there. The questions return values. We fill out our code that with the values that are returned, and then we evaluate those, all of that using an SMT solver. So basically, it's its way of taking all of that information and evaluating it logically. So rather than, LLMs are inherently probabilistic, we are turning that into a logical evaluation, saying, are these rules violated based on the information that we have in front of us? And so in a large document, we would look at each chunk of text that we look at, and we'd ask all these questions of each chunk of text and analyze. So basically analyzing the rules per chunk. In this case, because the email is so short, we analyze that it's all one chunk. We do that analysis. And so these questions map to individual rules. And that's why I shared with you before. You can see for each one of these questions, if you click into it, it shows you the questions that we're asked to derive an answer to that rule. So that's how we get to pass fail. So let's see, finding my way back here, sorry. So you get to, that's how you configure everything. You update, you click update, it generates the guardrail. Each one of these has an ID associated with it. You link, in code, you would be linking to it through our API and calling into it using that code, that ID. And it returns values for you. So that is the compliance use case. And so to generalize, you can use any policy document to do this with. And I mentioned before, there are lots of different applications. This compliance is one, but this could be used for, you could be capturing an analysis process, as I mentioned. So if you have documents you need to review and you have certain ways you review them, you can automate your process and apply those rules and just derive whether or not, where things are not aligning with your criteria, and just surface that information, really expedite your process of evaluating large amounts of textual content. You can apply it to communications, make sure your internal policies are not being violated with those communications. You could apply this to an application review process with your application review criteria. There are lots of possibilities here. This is just one. And yes, that's what it does. Looks like there are no questions today. So I'm going to wrap it there. Thanks for joining. If you'd like more information, we'd love to hear from you. We can talk about specific applications. You can reach out to us at info@jaxon.ai. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good one.